My girlfriend, 21 female, and I, 22 male, have been dating since February of 2019. We met when I was a junior in college and she was a sophomore. Our first date was a Tinder date. We watched 21 Jump Street in the movie theater under our dorm building. We hit it off immediately and we've both been smitten ever since. It has been, on the whole, extremely wonderful. She is loving, kind, and goofy in a way none of my previous girlfriends have been. We forged deep connections with each other's families and have established a strong bedrock for our relationship. We moved into an apartment together when the lockdown began and our college shut down all on-campus housing. It was at this point that we began having some issues, which started small but gradually became more frustrating. I think these largely stemmed from the fact that we were interacting only with each other for days at a time. I would get frustrated at the way she handled problems, exploding with stress at the smallest of inconveniences in her life. She would, understandably, get upset at me if I promised to do something, like wash the dishes, for example, or clean a part of the house and didn't follow through. I then moved to a new city for my first post-grad job, and she came to spend some time there with me. We settled into the new apartment together, building furniture, exploring the area, going on adventures. It was a dramatic improvement from our earlier time in quarantine. We were happy. After a month, she returned to our college town to move into her new apartment and try to find work to save up for the school year. But in our relationship, one reservation remained. We had been in a relationship for a year and a half with no end in sight. We loved each other, but we were ready to decide that this was the person we were going to spend the rest of our lives with. What about the issues we'd had? Were we ready to set those aside forever? It was a concern we both shared. We talked about it and we decided that it would be best to break up. This only lasted about 16 hours. The next morning, she called me, crying, saying she had been up all night thinking about us. She wasn't ready to let our relationship go. I wholeheartedly agreed. With her, the good things were just too good. We agreed to commit to fixing the small issues in our relationship, and after that, things were absolutely blissful. It was sheer euphoria, almost like the honeymoon phase all over again. I went to visit her at our college, and the week I spent there was one of the best I can remember. Our concern about committing to someone while we were still so young, however, had not gone away. So we began talking about the prospect of an open relationship. It was something I thought I could potentially get on board with. After all, I thought, isn't it strange that you're expected to decide that this is the only person you want to have sex with for the rest of your life? Was it realistic to say that I would only have sex with her for the rest of my days? Don't I want to have many new experiences with other people while I'm in my sexual prime? My girlfriend, on the other hand, was interested in getting into an open relationship to explore her own sexuality. She comes from a deeply conservative, repressive Southern background full of racism and homophobia. For her, being anything other than perfectly straight was never an option. During college, though, it became increasingly clear to her that she was not only interested in men. At first, she thought she was interested in both women and men and identified as bisexual. But then she came to realize that she was actually pansexual. She felt sexual attraction to people regardless of their gender identity. So we began talking about what this open relationship would look like. She insisted that it was important to her for there to be no restrictions on who she could have sex with if we were to do this. That was a tough pill for me to swallow. What troubled me was the mental image of her having sex with a man. Her having sex with someone of any other gender identity did not bother me at all. I can explain the feeling in the following way. Obviously, there are not only two genders, but only two play a role in my sexual life. Men, since I'm a man, and women, since I'm attracted to women. So for my girlfriend to have sex with another man would feel like I'd been swapped out. Someone had taken my place, and that this man would get to do all the things that I cherished in sex with her. Whereas if she were to have sex with a woman, that would not feel the same to me because it wouldn't feel like I was being replaced, like someone else would be doing the things that I love instead of me. Simply put, I would be jealous of a man. I would not be jealous of anyone else. This was very upsetting to my girlfriend because her sexual attraction to people is not based on their gender. So to her, making such a distinction felt artificial. She immediately accused me of thinking that the only real sex was penetrative sex between a man and a woman, which was extremely frustrating to me. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think sex between any two people is sex. I had merely been talking about the way it made me feel, how it would make me jealous. Our conversations continued over the course of a few weeks, and she continued to express her irritation with me for harboring these reservations about her having sex with a man. It wasn't that she specifically wanted to go out and have sex with a man, she explained. She simply felt that placing a restriction like that on our open relationship would not be affirming of her gender identity. I never wanted to be complicit in doing her harm or repressing her gender identity, so finally, one day, I told her that maybe I should simply accept it and endure the pain that I knew would accompany such a choice. I knew it would not ever be fair to ask her to not have sex with men while I was able to have sex with women, even though, at heart, that was what I wabayu. That conversation is a key point in the story. I said that, and we continued discussing other less important elements of the open relationship. Eventually, we began talking about Tinder, and I told her I remembered going on Tinder during the 16 hours for which we were broken up and seeing our first ever conversation. I remembered how heartbroken I'd felt, I told her, and that was pretty much the end of the conversation. One of us had to go do something else, I think. But I in no way felt I had given my affirmative, enthusiastic consent to an open relationship. We never said we are open now or anything of the like. In fact, I couldn't have even imagined that she would construe that as the official beginning of an open relationship. Fast forward maybe a week and a half to last Saturday, September 26th. I had some high school friends visiting me, and we were driving back from the beach. I'd been having a wonderful weekend. I was sitting in the back seat, and I was texting my girlfriend about what a good time I was having as I laughed with my friends and bopped to the music. Out of nowhere, I got a text from her asking something along the lines of, "How much do we want to tell each other about the open relationship? Do we want to tell each other when it happens? Or not at all? Why don't we talk about it tomorrow night?" I said. "So we can figure those things out before we officially start it." "I thought we already had," she replied. "Did you already hook up with someone?" I asked. "To be honest, yes. I asked her who it was, and she told me. A friend of hers, a guy I've met." My heart sank. I felt nausea in my stomach, a heaviness in my chest. She apologized, but not emphatically enough for my liking. And as I expressed my anger at her for this, she quickly became angry at me, which makes me all the more furious. The rest of the weekend was a disaster. She asked that we not talk about it until the next day when we've both cooled off. I reluctantly accepted. We got on a call the next day and proceeded to have one of the worst conversations I can remember. I laid out a list of the things I thought were problematic about her choice, which were as follows. I did not give my enthusiastic, happy, clear consent to this at any point in any of our conversations. In relationships, consent should be clear and enthusiastic for all things, and it absolutely was not in this case. She should have waited until we hashed out the details of our open relationship before having sex with this man. Who was going to be a permissible sexual partner and who was not? What kinds of intimacy would be considered in violation of the boundaries of our relationship? She knew nothing about what I wanted, what boundaries I might ask for, and had sex with this man anyway. She'd had sex with a man, even though I told her how much this would hurt me. I'd made that extremely clear in all our conversations. Though I can't know for sure, I'd like to think that if I had been in her position, I would not have made the same choice. I would never do anything that I thought could hurt her because I love her so much. This man had sexual misconduct allegations against him. I was extremely disappointed by the fact that she would still give him the privilege of having sex with her, both for the sake of those who had accused him and also due to the risk to her own self as well. She had insisted that she didn't need to feel guilty because she did nothing wrong, since she believed we were in an open relationship. I, on the other hand, felt that she should feel extremely sorry, if for no other reason than she hurt someone she loved. I should mention that I definitely stand by these criticisms, even though the conversation in which I expressed them was a disastrous, chaotic exchange of tense emotions. I let my frustration get the best of me and basically treated her like a witness on the witness stand in the trial, laying out all my argument methodically and forcing her into a position where she felt like she needed to rebut everyone. It was a bad conversation, plain and simple, and on my end, I did a bad job. I don't think the talk helped anyone. Several hours later, she texted me saying, "I think we should break up," and explained that she now believes we think too differently, not simply about sex, but about many things. Suddenly, everything changed for me in an instant. I had been deeply hurt, furious. I hadn't been able to stop replaying the image of her and this guy having sex in my head in vivid, nauseating detail. But I loved her. I knew that very well, and I didn't want to lose her. By the next day, we had talked a lot, and I'd explained to her how deeply I want us to stay together and how ardently I love her. By the afternoon, she completely changed her tone. She apologized a million times, and she explained that it seemed like an injustice to even call what happened sex, since it was just nothing compared to what she and I do. She said if I don't want to stay with her, if she had fucked things up too bad, as she said, then she would understand. She told me about all the panic attacks she's endured over the previous 24 hours and how the guilt had destroyed her. She's sorry, she said, more than she can ever explain. We decided to stay together. I was elated. We also agreed that for the foreseeable future, our relationship should be exclusive. I have virtually no doubts about my decision to stay with her. I know this wasn't cheating, and I want to be with her. I can say that unequivocally. I love her very, very much. She's one of the best things to ever happen to me. A truly special person with a warm, giving heart. She lights up my life. I have not seen anything to indicate that, up to this point, this was an unhealthy relationship in any way. But I want nothing more than to be hit in the head with a brick and be made to forget the fact that she had sex with this other man after about 1.75 years of being together. As I mentioned, the image of their sex is playing on loop in my mind over and over and over again, and it's crushing. I asked about the details of their sexual encounter because I was possessed by a kind of masochistic curiosity. I didn't want to know, but I had to know. They had been smoking weed together, and it was impulsive, she said. I'm slightly relieved because they didn't do some of my favorite sexual things that she and I do, the things that turn me on the most, that I cherish as really special. But the negative effect of this knowledge is that now I can imagine their sex all the more vividly. It's just nauseating. I also explained to her that it was difficult for me to cope with the strange power dynamic this created in our relationship, that after all this time, she's now had sex with someone else, whereas I have not. She quickly responded that if I wanted to have sex with another girl, I could, and she wouldn't be upset. Perhaps it would rectify the power imbalance in our relationship, she said. I've thought about it a lot, and I tend to agree. I think that if I did have sex with another girl, I would feel less devastated by the imbalance. But I don't want to be a hypocrite and I don't want to do anything that would hurt her. While we were discussing this possibility, she said heartbreakingly, "What if you go on a Tinder date and it's just like it was with us?" The implication being, of course, that I could fall quickly and deeply in love with this girl, just as I did with her. She is very firm, though, in her insistence that she thinks this would be a good idea. She has repeated that belief with equal certainty several times since. So at the end of the day, I desperately need help with the following key questions. How do I stop replaying this image of them having sex in my mind? It's the bane of my existence. It's especially bad when I FaceTime her and can see her. It makes the images all the more vivid. I want to banish it from my life. It makes me want to puke. Will this just take time? Any particular strategies? I feel myself getting triggered by things she says all the time, and they make me imagine the sex so clearly. How can I explain my feelings about her having sex with another man without alienating her? She remains extremely frustrated by this, especially after asking me if I would have responded differently if she'd had sex with a girl. I said yes. I feel that I've approached her position with empathy and generosity, and I don't feel like I'm being treated with the same. At the end of the day, I truly believe that my sexuality is at the core of why I feel this way, and I don't feel that she's treating that feeling as valid. On the other hand, her sexuality has been repressed and demonized her entire life, whereas I am in a position of immense privilege, and my straightness has never been anything but encouraged, so I can understand why she would feel particularly sensitive to this. I think if she could comprehend why I feel this way, she would better understand why I became so upset at the news she gave me. Should I have sex with another girl? Do you agree with my instinct that it would help rectify the imbalance and could essentially contribute to a new start in our relationship, where we could say, okay, we each tried having sex with someone else, and now we're happy and exclusive together again? To sum everything up, my girlfriend thought we had decided that we were in an open relationship. I did not have the same impression, so she had sex with another man. I have no doubts about the fact that she loves me deeply, and she feels extremely sorry about this. How can I move on from it? How can I stop replaying the image of them having sex in my mind? Also, my girlfriend is pansexual, and as a straight man, for her to have sex with a man, as opposed to a person of any other gender, is more hurtful to me and makes me more jealous because it feels like this other man gets to do those things instead of me. How do I convince her that it's not simply that I believe sex between men and women is the only real valid sex, because nothing could be further from the truth? And she says I can have sex with another girl. Should I do that? Both for the experience, since I've been dating the same girl for a very long time, and also to help rectify the imbalance in the relationship. Let's see the comment. Sounds like she had that D lined up, and the second she saw an opening, she pounced. She 100% knew she wanted to sleep with this man, and it was a primary component of why she asked for an OR. That's why she badgered you to death about trying to set boundaries, which are very important for this kind of arrangement, BTW. Her assertion that any boundaries all are abusive or not letting her express herself is toxic, manipulative, and just plain incorrect. I would be reconsidering this whole thing. Man, so much to process. I'm gonna be blunt, man. That happened way too quick. She had her eye on that dude for a minute for her to act on it so quickly. There's been chemistry growing for some time for her to act so quickly with that specific person. I'm sorry, May, in my opinion, it's time to end it on respectful terms and go our separate ways. In simple terms, she cheated on you. No need to stay. So many bad takes in here. You have to agree on conditions. If you don't like the conditions, you get to leave, not harangue someone about it until they give in and rush off to immediately exploit it. You got manipulated into an open relationship because your significant other had her eye on some guy that she wanted to bang for a while. Crap happens all the time. Leave her. She's trash and not apologetic at all. As a pansexual woman in an open relationship, I feel I should weigh in. The rules of an open relationship need to be very explicitly stated before anyone of anyone, especially if love is a factor. My primary partner is a cisgender man, and he has stated he's okay with me being with other cisgender men. But that was part of the rules we discussed very early in our discussion about being in an option relationship. We have actually been playing it safe because the pandemic is still really bad where we live, so we've been monogamous for the whole thing. Without actually hearing how the conversation went down, it's really hard to tell if there was simply a miscommunication or if she basically used her sexuality as an excuse to cheat on you. I find it odd she wouldn't be as understanding of your sexuality and preferences in the relationship as you were being of hers. But again, it's hard to tell with a one-sided description of events. I would just talk to her and state that the rules need to be spelled out to avoid future heartache and feelings of betrayal. You are also totally allowed to state that you prefer her not being with other men. She might not like that, but as her primary partner, you're allowed to state that.